There's a change in the air as the season transitions from summer to autumn. All around me in nature, I witness the subtlety of these changes and how they shape the landscape. I'm always grateful for these special moments. Back home, I've decided to make a white bean stew, a comforting dish that heralds the arrival of autumn. I have 2 cans of cannellini beans. I'm mashing one, and then I will combine them with the other can and set aside. I'm adding olive oil to a hot pan with shallots and some celery. I'll fry them until soft and golden. Then I'll add in some garlic and cook until fragrant before adding in vegetable stock. You could also use a dry white wine instead. I'll let this simmer down until it almost has evaporated. Then I'm adding in kale, one of my favourite foods, some lemon juice and all of the beans. I'll then add in some more vegetable stock, pop the lid half on and leave this to simmer for 10 minutes. And that's it, you will have a delicious bean stew. And to get the full recipe, you can head to my blog, nicolasfairford.com. So you may remember a few weeks ago that I painted my front door. Once again, I've done it twice already in the past 2 years, but I decided to paint it again, and I painted it in that beautiful green colour. And whilst I was waiting for the first layer of paint to dry, I suddenly had a bit of a random crazy thought that maybe I should paint the whole of this round table in the same green, and I just pictured it looking striking, elegant, and just a focal point of the room, really jazzing it up. So yes, whilst I was waiting for the first coat of paint to dry, I thought that it was a great opportunity to give the top of the table a coat of paint to see how it would look. Now, I painted the first coat. It didn't really go on very well. That should have been a sign not to go any further, but I guess it was already too late anyway. So I painted a second coat and a third coat, and this is the result that we have now. And I immediately knew that I didn't like it. Now, one of the things that I always tell people who watch this channel is that you should just take a few risks and do things. And if they don't really work out, then not all is lost. And so that is the approach that I took when I realised I didn't like this table, and I knew that I would have to bring it back to its former glory. So also I should point out is that I have commissioned a painting from a local artist in Edinburgh called Jonathan Freemantle, and he makes these beautiful, exquisite modern pieces of art, and he posts every day. He sells a tiny little picture, and he paints a new picture every day and sells them on his Instagram as well as his other artworks. And he made this tiny painting of a green mask. And I will get him to explain this better one day for you, but basically the principle of it is this green mask is a representation and symbol of renewal, rejuvenation, and being connected to nature. And it just really spoke to me, loving green, and I just have been thinking for the longest time that I wanted something striking and modern on the walls to kind of cohesively live with the more traditional, elegant things that I have in the room. So I contacted Jonathan, he's a friend of mine, and I asked him if he'd be able to make this painting in a large canvas size, and he agreed to do that. So when I was thinking about painting the table green, I thought that these two would complement each other very well, because I'm thinking of putting the painting on that wall there. But yes, to make a long story short, to make a long story short, it didn't work out. I don't like this at all. It's the wrong green. It's probably the wrong type of paint to use on the table, and it just isn't working. So today I am going to reverse what I did to the table, and hopefully it will work. Now in the past, whenever I've painted furniture, I've used Annie Sloan chalk paint, and it has always been a massive success. One of the great things about Annie Sloan chalk paint is that you never need to do any prep work, only light cleaning to remove dust and residue, but you don't need to sand down, you don't need to make good, you just literally apply the paint onto the surface and it usually works very well. And then once you're done, you seal it with the Annie Sloan wax and you have a piece of furniture that will last for many years. Now this table has been painted in the last 6 years, I would say 5 or 6 times, because I enjoy experimenting with paint and trying out new looks, and because it's not that expensive to do it, it is just something that I can justify and that I enjoy doing. So I am going to take the table back to what it was, and I'm going to do that with the Annie Sloan chalk paint, so I'm going to share with you the process and how I'm going to do it. Okay, so let's have a look what we have in here. Right, so to repaint this tabletop and get it back to something a bit more chic, we need 3 products from the Annie Sloan range. And I would just like to point out that this is not a sponsored post, it's not an ad. I've been using Annie Sloan paint for the last 10 years and it's honestly my favourite, again because of how easy it is to use and the results that you get. So what I always like to do is buy a big tub of the Annie Sloan Original, and this is a white neutral paint and it is the base of every painting that I do. So even if I'm going to paint something, for example bright blue, I will always paint a layer of Original on first, because it just provides a blank canvas and gets you to visualize how it's going to look in the end, but also it's a great primer for the rest of the piece that you're working on. So you can paint it in Original and then it's a blank canvas for you to do whatever you need to do next. But it also works for what I want to do today, which is apply a kind of grey wash over the table to make it look in harmony with everything else. So that is what I use. I've bought a big tub of it, as I said, because I use it all the time, so I'm probably not going to have to use that much of it now. I reckon it's going to be covered in 2 coats and that will do the job. But then I've got this for any other painting projects that I want to do. And I have to say that when I have a big pot like this, I do feel inspired to think of what else I can do in the house, and there are probably a lot of projects that I could do. So that will inspire me and get me in the mood to do some more. So that is the Annie Sloan Original chalk paint, and yes, I recommend this one as a starting point if you've never painted with chalk paint before. You apply it on and it looks great. Next, what I want to do is, like I just mentioned, is I want a kind of grey wash. So what I will do is I've bought this little pot of Annie Sloan French linen chalk paint, and this is a kind of earthy, muted grey taupe colour. So what I will do with this, I only needed a small pot because I use a tiny bit of paint and then I water it down to the consistency of double cream. And then what you do is you apply the wash with a rag and then you wipe it off immediately. So you're getting a very distressed, natural grey look rather than it being a solid colour. So yeah, I like to buy these little pots when I know I'm not going to be using this for anything much else. I'm not really going to be painting anything else in a French linen colour. I only need it for this. So that's why I bought the small version. And then to finish off, I needed some more wax, and this is the Annie Sloan chalk paint wax in clear. Now this is a remarkable little product. It is amazing how much it changes the end result once you've painted your piece of furniture. The thing about chalk paint, it pretty much does what it says on the tin. It makes everything a little bit chalky and flat. Sometimes I do like that look on certain things, but when I'm using it for something like this table, which I use for dining and for working on, it needs to be sealed and finished so that it doesn't get scuffed or marked. And what this chalk paint does is you apply a clear layer of it all over the top of the piece, the finished piece, and it just gives it a beautiful shine, patina and finish to finish everything off and make it look really great. So those are the 3 products that I'm going to use from Annie Sloan, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. So to begin, I always like to clean off the table with white spirit or methylated spirit. This just helps to remove any dust and residue and prepares the table for cleaning. It's very simple to do this. You just wipe it on and then let it dry for about 2 minutes. Now I'm just starting the painting process. I'm layering a quite thin layer of paint on the table, and as you can see, I'm trying to keep the brush strokes in one direction. So I'm going from left to right and making sure that once I've applied some paint, I put these strokes through the work so that it's uniform and neat, and I'll explain more about this later. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish the first coat of paint. It took me about 10 minutes. It's very simple and very easy. So I'm not sure how well you can see because there's a bright light shining in and I can see that it's obscuring a lot of this, but this first layer of paint was very light, and what I tried to do was focus on getting the brush strokes quite even. Now, lots of people wouldn't bother with this for the first coat, but I think that if you do that on the first coat, it's going to build into the second coat and the end result will be a lot better. So the aim that I want to achieve is to see this brush stroke, this grain, this texture, because I think it makes it a lot more interesting. So they're not completely straight, but they are all the way across and they're all in the same direction, the brush strokes. So I'm going to add another layer on, and then I think I'll probably need to just put the grey on. I don't think I'll need another one after that. And you will see these brush strokes when you apply the wax, and that will give it depth and character. But as you can see, well, I'm not sure whether you can see, but what happens is after this first layer, it just completely provides a new surface for the paint. You do not need to sand or make good. It really is a great solid finish, and it dries in about 5 minutes, completely dry. So I am going to go ahead now and start the second coat and finish this off. It's already looking so much better. I'm not sure whether you can see the plant behind me. It's a fern, but the reason why I hated the green table so much was because it just clashed with the fern, and I just placed the fern back on top of here and it looks amazing again. So I'm very happy. So I've watered down the grey paint quite thinly, and although I mentioned before that I was going to apply this with a rag and then wipe it off, I've decided that I'm going to apply it with the brush and just leave it as it is and just keep going through the paint, stroking through to make sure there's lots of streaks, which I really want. I want to be able to see all the texture. And I really do like this colour. I think it looks very calming and beautiful. So yes, I'm just applying the paint on here instead of wiping it off, and you'll see the end result soon, which I think looks pretty nice. So as you can see, the table is finished. I really am happy with the way it's turned out. So now we're going to use the Annie Sloan clear wax just to finish it off. So I'm just going to take an old rag, rub it in. You can see how much I'm going to use, probably a bit more than that actually, so we can get a bigger surface area. And then I'm going to rub it on, and you can see the way it changes the patina of it. Hopefully you can see when I do that. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this all the way over until it is completely covered in wax. And that is the project finished. Nice and easy and simple, but beautiful. I think I've covered the whole table. Oh, it's looking so beautiful. And now it feels smooth. Gorgeous. Perfect. So happy with it. So happy with it. You can actually build up the levels of wax as well, if you want. I think this is perfect. I'll let this dry. In a wonderful case of happenstance, Jonathan Freemantle was available to deliver my painting, so I thought that it would be nice to have a chat with him about the piece and where the inspiration came from. So Jonathan, we've hung the painting. It looks amazing on the wall. Thank you so much for doing it for me. Can you just tell everybody a little bit about the inspiration behind the painting and how it came to be?
Sure, yeah. I'm thrilled. I think it looks fantastic in the space. I think it's not always the case that a painting that you imagine in a space works. And this one's got so much energy, but it somehow just resonates, it works.
Fits well.
And that's often because the commission is a good one. You know, those, you kind of can't fake that. And this particular commission felt like that from the start. So it emerged from these daily masks. I've been making, I call them masks, every day in the studio. And I began them as a kind of practice of release. So I needed some place in my studio, or some part of my daily practice where I could just make marks in the same way as like a kid draws on the walls of their house without their parents knowing. You know, marks that felt illegal or just had a real release, and drew outside the borders of my daily practice, which is, you know, my kind of artwork, you know, the stuff that I present to the world. These were really just for me. And also they were a place where the kind of subconscious could come through without too much thinking, so the marks were expressive and really free. And I released them on Instagram, but they weren't really for sale. Some people were buying them through the back door, as it were. But anyway, you saw one, a small green one, kind of electric green one, and sent me a message saying, could this be a bigger painting? And I hadn't thought of doing it, and I'd resisted that for a while, and it just felt right. Particularly because I know you're a friend. The image you chose was an exciting one to me. It was this small live wire of a green man. So yeah, I just moved to a studio in the countryside in the Scottish borders, surrounded by green, surrounded by nature. So a lot of things came together to make it feel right. And then a few of the decisions I made in the kind of materiality of it also helped it flow. So the image that you chose is on paper, so the background is white, and it just felt with the bigger work that it should be on this Belgian linen, which is just such a premium material. It's the kind of Rolls Royce of art materials, surfaces. And it's got so much heft. You know, it's a word I love, which is kind of means weight. And it's got a history to it. And also the tone, the color works so beautifully, I think, with these sap greens and this viridian. So yeah, it just all came together, and I feel really delighted.
Yeah, it looks really amazing, and I think why I was drawn to it was because of that green man aspect. So can you just explain about the green man and what it symbolizes?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a hell of a lot. I'm really fascinated in ancient mystical cultures, and also particularly a lot of my work is drawn from a deep immersive relationship with nature. I really placing my body in nature and allowing nature to kind of work through me. So it's a kind of collaboration with nature, and I do things like climb mountains, get the rocks from the mountain, grind those rocks, make paint from the mountain, paint the mountain with the mountain. You know, all these ways to get immersed, physically immersed. And the ancient Celts had this figure, the green man, and I guess he's maybe my muse. You know, He symbolizes the wildness of nature, the rawness of nature. It's this ancient figure which is nature, but he has a kind of mischievous spirit as well, which I like as well. And I imagine you would connect with that.
Definitely. You were saying that it kind of, there's something hidden in here.
Yes.
And that's, even though people get to know me every week on YouTube, obviously there's only so much that people can see. So there is always going to be that little bit of a hidden side, which is also why I loved this one. Yeah,
I mean, knowing you and really enjoying conversations we've had, some late night conversations, you know, we've been speaking about this kind of dichotomy where you have a mask, you know, your face, and then you also have this primal instinct, which is part of you as well.
Yeah.
And this relationship between this kind of ancient primal physical instinct and this person that walks through the world, you know, and I think it's a really exciting question to have, and I think this work speaks about that.
It does.
King Charles had the Green Man on his coronation invitation, and he's deeply driven by nature and protecting nature. And there's many places that you find this mischievous spirit, this character that this is what I love about nature, is it's on the one hand it's placid and beautiful, and we kind of we appreciate it in that sense, but it's also savage. You know, winter's coming, things die, things are born again, and this Green Man spirit is that kind of savage energy that nature encapsulates. Unpredictable. So I mean, I think, and even some of the colors, green is a really interesting color that, but when you're painting it, I mean, the greens in nature are so diverse, and some of them are kind of, when you really look, they're almost rude, you know, some of those greens. So this viridian for me is a real red flag color. If you start using it, it just gets everywhere. It totally takes over. So marrying it with the sap green, it's a bit of a kind of dangerous combination because they don't always speak to each other. But somehow it does work in this painting.
I think it goes back to nature again. If you look outside, the hedgerows, the trees, the grass, they're all different shades, but they all work.
Sure,
So it kind of, it's in the painting.
And the more you look, you know, you think you're seeing it, and then you look properly, and you realize how much more drama there is than your initial looking, you know.
Well, I'm really, really happy with the painting. Again, thank you, and I'm sure everybody's going to be totally charmed by you and to check out your work. So I will provide a link in the description box with Jonathan's Instagram and his website so that you can check it out.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, I really hope that you enjoyed hearing Jonathan's perspective about his painting and the meaning behind it. I think you would agree that he is a pretty fascinating person. Whenever we meet, I always love what he has to say. He's so interesting, and he's just got such a way with words, the way he views the world and explains things. I really look up to him, and I'm glad that he's my friend, and it's so nice to have a piece of his work in my home for me to enjoy for probably the rest of my life. And the Green Man is such a happy symbol of rejuvenation, nature. It's a huge part of who I am. I always talk about nature and how I'm constantly inspired by it, so it's a very meaningful piece. And I think that whenever you decide to bring art into your home, it's always best if there is a meaning or attachment to it, even if you're just compelled by a piece of artwork and you find that you can't stop thinking about it. So yes, always choose your art with intention, and then you will love it forever. It is really nice to be back home. I was away for 1 month, and I just want to say thank you to everybody for your patience. I haven't posted for about 2 weeks, and that was because I had to try and organise getting myself back in here. There was quite a lot to do. Unpacking all of my luggage, doing laundry, and then fixing up the house so that it felt like home again. But it is heaven to be back here. I've really been enjoying myself just being in the house. For the first time since I've moved here, I haven't been out for probably 5 days. I've been out to the store to buy groceries, and I've also been to take Sophie for a walk, obviously, but I haven't seen any friends. And normally I would be climbing the walls. I'm a very social person, but I've just enjoyed being. And I think that is the meaning of home, and how important it is that you have a place where you can relax, be yourself, and just enjoy your own company and just being in a beautiful, safe space. And when you're away from your home for a month, you realise just how important that is, even though I kind of already knew, as I'm sure most of you do too. But yes, I am back home. It's really nice to be here. I'm looking forward to creating a lot more content and more videos now that autumn is upon us. There's a real change in the air out there. So I think there's going to be a lot to see and do in the coming weeks, so it's exciting. So thank you so much for joining me once again. I really hope that you have enjoyed this episode and found it fun and interesting. Please do let me know in the comments. Also, if you watch this channel but haven't yet subscribed, I would really appreciate your subscription. It means a lot and will help me to grow this channel. But yes, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you next time, but until then, take care. Bye-bye.